Good morning, and thank you for joining us. My name is Cassandra Sebastian, Cassandra Sebastian, and I'm a Public Information Officer with the El Paso County Sheriff's Office. I'll be facilitating today's press conference. You'll be hearing from El Paso County Sheriff Joseph Roybal, Joseph Teller County Sheriff Jason Mikesell, Jasonmikesell, and Congressman Jeff Crank, Jeffcrank. Today's press conference updates the citizens of the Pikes Peak region on the efforts of law enforcement officials who are trying to hold criminals accountable and reduce victims in Colorado. Please make today's press conference as efficient as possible. Hold questions until after we have heard from all of today's speakers. I'll facilitate questions at the end. Here in support of law enforcement in the Pikes Peak region, We Are for Colorado Coalition, our special guests, Mayor Sharon Thompson, Senator Mark Baisley, Teller County Commissioners Dan Williams, Eric Stone, and Bob Campbell. Eric Coltrip is here. He's representing our local ICE office. We also have Commissioner Corey Applegate and Jarvis Caldwell with the House of Representatives for Colorado. Many of our legislators and elected officials could not attend because of previous commitments. However, you can find a complete list of those supporting today's announcement in the press packet and on our website, epcsheriff.com. You can also find documents referenced in today's press conference, lawsuits, legislation, a letter from the ACLU, Congressman Crank's letter to Governor Polis, a list of members on the upcoming hearing committee, and more on our website as well. Again, thank you for being here today. I'll turn things over to El Paso County Sheriff Joseph Roybal.
Good morning. Thank you all for joining us today to discuss a critical topic, public safety in Colorado. Sheriff Mikesell and I joined forces multiple times over the past few years to ensure our deputies receive state-of-the-art training to increase and improve law enforcement efforts across the 4th Judicial District. We take our mission as sheriff seriously. So much so, we cross-deputized our patrol and investigation deputies this summer to ensure criminals, who by their nature do not respect jurisdictional boundaries, we hold them accountable in the 4th Judicial District no matter where they commit the crime, El Paso County or Teller County. Last year, during the legislative session, Sheriff Mikesell and I spearheaded a coalition of sheriffs as elected officials across Colorado to address laws which prohibit us from working with our federal partners, specifically ICE, Immigration, Customs, and Enforcement. We want to hold violent criminals accountable who are here in the United States illegally. Unfortunately, despite our best efforts, House Bill 24-1128 was indefinitely suspended during House State Civic, Military, and Veterans Affairs Committee hearing in the 2024 legislative session. For both of us, the fight wasn't over. Our offices have engaged in lawsuits to reverse bad anti-public safety policies and allow us to work with our law enforcement partners at ICE in the interest of public safety. ICE is the only federal agency with which Colorado state statute has limited law enforcement from working with. As heads of enforcement, we have been concerned about the growing population of foreign cartels, sex traffickers, and gang members. Sadly, politics have failed the citizens of Colorado when it comes to dealing with illegal immigration and the negative consequences. By prohibiting law enforcement in Colorado from detaining criminal immigrants who cannot legally be held by the judicial system, the legislature and the laws signed into effect have made Colorado a haven for criminal immigrants. And I'll repeat that. Colorado is a haven for criminal immigrants. I'm tired of politicians telling me and my deputies how to keep people in our community safe. To address these violent criminals, we must have our hands unshackled by these Colorado laws. Recently, with growing concern for public safety, I have made changes to the El Paso County Sheriff's Office policies, permitting my deputies to work with our partners at ICE, who join us here today, and hold accountable the most dangerous in our communities. And yes, despite what you have heard from Denver, dangerous violent criminals have made their way over the southern border illegally and present dangers across communities of Colorado. Just this week, here in El Paso County, we arrested an individual who, upon initial contact, eluded law enforcement. Fortunately, the individual was taken into custody and found to be driving a stolen vehicle, a stolen weapon, a large quantity of dangerous drugs, and more. After the initial investigation, and thanks to our partners at ICE, we determined the documents found on the suspect were falsified. The suspect, a dangerous criminal, is now sitting at the El Paso County Jail waiting to face charges. Because of our growing concern, we are announcing a new coalition to address public safety issues across Colorado today. We Are for Colorado is a partnership between elected officials and law enforcement across the state. We aim to keep Colorado a safe and prosperous place for citizens to work, travel, and raise their families. Colorado is our home. Our families live here. As duly elected sheriffs, we are committed to doing everything we can to ensure the safety and well-being of every individual in our respective counties. Sheriff Mikesell.
Thank you, Joe. Good morning, and thank you, Sheriff. I'm Sheriff Jason Mikesell of the Teller County Sheriff's Office. In the current legislation, Senator Mark Baisley, who joins us today, was the writer of this bill. I sat down with Mark and we wrote this bill together so we could bring it forth to Colorado. We introduced Senate Bill 25047, Enforcement of Federal Immigration Laws. This bill would reverse the harmful policies that prevent us from collaborating with our partnership at ICE. To be clear, we have no desire to arrest illegal immigrants in the state of Colorado. We are arresting criminal illegal aliens in the state of Colorado. We have no desire to deal with families, do roundups, single moms, grandparents, or any undocumented illegal aliens. If they are not committing erroneous crimes in our communities, we don't want them. We only want to deal with people that commit crimes in Colorado. It's been a large standing policy of media outlets and politicians to tell you that we're after everyone, that we're taking people from homes, that they haven't had any crimes committed, that we're doing that against children and going to schools. We have not. We won't do those things. We're looking for criminals, and that's where it ends. Criminal illegal aliens. I've been told over and over by the legislative body that they're no longer called illegal aliens, we're calling them undocumented. Fine. They're undocumented criminal illegal aliens then in the state of Colorado that we need to deal with. And to further clarify in this context, a person simply being in the United States undocumented, we cannot arrest anyways. That is something the federal agencies such as ICE or others have to do. And although that may be a federal or federally illegal to do so and come across the borders undocumented, which is illegal in the United States of America, in this state, we don't arrest those persons. Only, again, criminal illegal aliens. We want to apprehend criminals, specifically violent criminals, such as drug dealers, human trafficking, rapists, homicide suspects. Those are the people we want to go after. And if they're criminally illegal aliens, then we want to deal with them as such. Working with ICE enables our officers to correctly identify and process information regarding suspects when a crime is committed and holds them accountable for any additional crimes outside of Colorado. This also alleviates the tax burdens on the state of Colorado and on our taxpayers, who are having to pay to house illegal immigration and criminal illegal immigration inside of our prisons, jails, prosecutions, and on our patrols to where we're dealing with those folks. We shouldn't have to pay those costs. Here's the other thing. We aren't able to work with ICE like we should. But as of last week, the Department of Justice has identified that the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, HSI, and ICE all have the same authorities. They are acting and de facto federal ICE agents now. So are we not to work with any of those different organizations to deal with crimes, terrorism, huge financial crimes that have hit so many families in the state of Colorado? Working with ICE ensures justice for all victims, whether they are citizens or not. Truthfully, those who are undocumented are often the most vulnerable because culturally they may not be accustomed to contacting law enforcement. The other side of it is these folks are being released on our bonding and our parole, which is failing in the state of Colorado, and we're releasing those people right back into the same groups that cannot speak, that are victims that are silenced by the fact that they are undocumented illegal aliens. So when we release a criminal undocumented illegal alien into their midst, what do you think they do? They harass, they threaten, they terrorize those folks in not speaking out. That's what's harming those people. With today's announcement, We Are Colorado Coalition, we are happy to announce that over a dozen other sheriffs across Colorado have already committed to being a partner. These sheriffs share our concerns regarding current laws and public safety. I'm happy that I've been able to partner with Sheriff Joe Roybal, who's one of the best sheriffs I think El Paso has ever seen. He stands for the people in this county. He stands with me and all other sheriffs to push that agenda to make sure that we do have a safe Colorado. We need Colorados to act also. It's not just about sheriffs. It's elected officials. It's Colorado legislatures. We demand that support of the public in order to push for the passage of this bill, 25047. We also need citizens to reach out to committee members. Make it clear they want law enforcement agencies to prohibit, when it comes to working with ICE, to apprehend and charge and prosecute dangerous, prolific, illegal criminals in Colorado. We have a cartel issue in Colorado. I've been told so many times by legislators we don't have one. Watch the news. All of your news media outlets have been producing documents talking about cartels, shootings, things that haven't happened here. I grew up in Colorado. I'm a Colorado native. We've never had the crime that we are now seeing in Colorado. Sheriff Roybal and I feel blessed to have the support of major elected officials in the 4th Judicial District, including Deputy District Attorney Mikel Allen, our county commissioners, our federal representative to Washington, D.C., Congressman Crank, who's here with us today. We are also grateful that Governor Polis has recently expressed his concern about immigration and that it is a federal issue and that he does want more federal agents within the state of Colorado. We do want him to work with us so that we can have an open policy for law enforcement to work with all of those agencies to make a safer Colorado. Because without doing so and having our hands tied, we can't do so. The Attorney General talks about the fact that we have so much fentanyl and how he's working on these committees. Those committees don't do anything when we cannot stop the criminal illegal aliens and the cartels from bringing fentanyl into our state. What are they doing about that? We want to work with them in providing the abilities to do so. On the last thing, the ACLU has attempted to sue us multiple times. They recently sent out letters talking about the fact that they are going to sue sheriffs that work with ICE in any of those endeavors. We have found that they have become an arm of the state, where if the state laws don't prohibit us to, ACLU will sue us and attempt to stop us. And they send out letters to attempt to bully law enforcement throughout Colorado. I would ask that the Attorney General step in and also assist law enforcement in stopping those issues from happening when we're doing our duties legally, legitimately, and for the right reasons. Thank you. Sheriff Roybal.
Thanks, Sheriff. Senate Bill 25-47 will be heard in the Senate State Veterans and Military Affairs Committee at 2 p.m. on February 25th. February 25th at 2 p.m. where I put together a plan to organize supportive testimony and advocate for the bill's successful passage out of committee. Here in El Paso County, we had a tragic criminal case. I'm not talking about what ifs or this could happen. I'm going to give an example of a real case that I testified in front of the committee last year that they didn't want to hear it. Some of the legislators stood up and walked out before I even started speaking and didn't return until I was done. They don't want to hear the impact that criminal illegal immigrants are having on our state. We had a case where an illegal criminal sexually assaulted 3 girls under the age of 8. 3 victims under the age of 8. He posted bond, and guess what? We never heard or seen of him again. Chances are he's no longer in the country. If he returns, guess what he'll be doing? Reoffending. Let's make no mistake. I say sexual assault, so it's easier on the ears. He raped 3 little girls, posted bond. Had I had the opportunity to enter a contract with ICE, I could hold that person even after posting bond, and he could remain here at El Paso County Jail while he went to trial and held accountable for those crimes. But he posted bond, and he was free to go. It is our hope when the legislatures in committee hear this, we have demonstrated our intent to uphold peace and order in Colorado, ensure justice for victims, and hold dangerous criminals accountable, not roundups like they want you to believe. The passage of this bill is critical for peacekeepers in our agencies and across Colorado. Over the next few weeks, our coalition will update our communities and the media regarding opportunities to support the successful passage of this legislation. Community members can find the updated list of coalition members on our websites and social media pages. Next, we are honored to introduce Congressman Jeff Crank, who has been a wealth of knowledge and resources in Washington as we have looked for alternative ways to ensure our agencies can work with all of our federal partners. Again, we are for Colorado.
Well, thank you, Sheriff Roybal, Sheriff Mikesell. Thank you for your leadership on this issue. Thanks to all of the state legislators and mayors, county commissioners, and others who are here as well. I'm most honored, though, by the men and women who wear the uniform behind us. And I was thinking, as I was standing here, how many years of experience must be standing behind me in law enforcement? 150, 200 maybe years of law enforcement. Sometimes as an elected official, you want to try and practice a little bit of humility. And you don't view yourself as the expert on everything. And I sure don't when it comes to law enforcement. So I have to look to people like the men and women standing behind me as the experts on this issue. And when they tell me they need relief from the federal government, I believe them. And it is my job as their representative in Congress to deliver that relief from the federal government. We know what happens when governments don't work together. I've used this example many times. When a bank gets robbed, the FBI comes in, a federal law enforcement agency comes in and helps solve that crime because of the interstate commerce nature of the crime. Well, what would happen if the federal government just decided, well, we're just not going to do this anymore? Society breaks down. Society isn't safe. Criminals get away with crime. So it is the expectation of voters, it is the expectation of citizens in our community that governments work together and that they work together for the safety of this community. And I'm very pleased to know that we have our local law enforcement that is working very hard to ensure that we're getting these bad folks out of our country. To the case that Sheriff Roybal just pointed out of the monster that was charged with those crimes, I would say he's not just going to commit them if he comes back here, he's probably committing them in some other community in America or some other place in the world. Don't tell me you have compassion as a politician when you're defending a system that allows that to happen. It is the expectation of the citizens of this state that we protect and defend them through law enforcement. So I would just encourage every citizen to come forward and to testify on this bill. This effort of We Are for Colorado is about standing up for the citizens of Colorado, and I'm proud to stand next to the real leaders in this movement. It's not me. It's the people behind me. It's law enforcement who stands out every day, puts their lives on the line for our safety. And I am honored to represent the 5th Congressional District in Congress. My job's easy compared to theirs. They have the unfortunate possibility every day that they go out that they could be shot at and that they could not come home. All I have to do is cast a vote, and that vote will always be in support of them. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go ahead and take questions now. Yes, sir.
For Sheriff Roybal, I wonder if you could talk a little more about the policy you announced today with ICE, and in particular, whether you have any concerns about that conflicting with existing state law.
Absolutely. I'll address the last part first. I have no concerns with my new policy conflicting with state law. Give you a little bit of history about it. Following investigations and a successful lawsuit against El Paso County Sheriff's Office, the last administration before me began to minimize exposure, as they should, which included eliminating the 287G program and not working with ICE. That lawsuit was brought forth by the ACLU, who, as you know, it's in your press packet, sent a threatening letter. I'm here saying, ACLU, threaten me all you want. I have worked with ICE. We have discussed this. I have worked with my attorneys to make sure we are following the current Colorado law as written. A couple weeks ago, the governor himself said law enforcement can work with ICE. That will be my first defense when ACLU files a lawsuit, because we are moving forward. The example of this weekend of the person we arrested is a great example of how the new policy does follow the laws of Colorado, and we're making sure that we do not incur liability for the citizens of El Paso County, just public safety.
I also wonder if you could talk a little bit about that arrest. I see you doing your job, arresting somebody that are facing fairly serious criminal charges. I'm wondering how this legislation that you're supporting would change any of that.
Here's how it would change. Currently, we are allowed to work with ICE when it comes to criminal investigations, and that's the part that I've employed in my new policy. The big difference is I cannot hold people on an ICE hold. So say this person bonds out. We now will call ICE, which we hadn't in the recent past. We will call ICE, and they have an opportunity to come and pick him up. If they do, they have to hold this person, detain him somewhere else within the state. Then it is my deputies to try to track him down, go up, and pick him up for court. If I could enter a contract with ICE to hold illegal criminals who've committed crimes against the citizens here, I could keep that person right in our jail, and they will go to court like every other citizen does who are incarcerated at the El Paso County Jail. My court and transfer deputies will take them to court, have a court hearing, and come back, despite posting bond. That's what this law does. Huge difference. Will ensure that they remain in custody. The example of the previous person who just skipped out on bond, who knows where he's at? Safe to say, committing other criminal acts on the innocent. That's the big difference. That's what I'm asking for. Allow me to hold those criminals for ICE at the El Paso County Jail.
And then lastly, what do you think are the odds this legislation is going to pass in the State House dominated by Democrats?
I think a message has been sent. Hopefully they listen to us. Last year when we testified, we had people saying, well, you're just going to break up families. That's what you want. We made it crystal clear. It is written in this legislation. We're going after criminals. If they vote against not allowing us to house criminals, they're voting against the safety of their own communities. I feel confident that it has a better chance this year than it did last year. I won't give you numbers because I'm not a gambling man, but I say it's better than last year.
Yes, sir.
Do you want to enter into a 287G agreement with ICE again if this legislation were to pass?
Absolutely. Our federal partners' resources are strained like we all are. Like Congressman said, we need to work together. 287G allows them to have another arm of their agency. I have contracts with all other federal agencies throughout the state. FBI, DEA, ATF. Those other agencies, I have task force officers working with them. But the state doesn't allow me to do that with ICE. Entering into a 287G contract will assist ICE in helping identify those criminals if they're illegal or not. That's all it does. And yes, I intend to enter into that contract.
And one other question. So you mentioned a policy change recently to work more with ICE. And both you and Sheriff Mikesell have talked about how the goal of this is not to break up families. if this were to pass, will there be policy implemented at the El Paso County Sheriff's Office to make sure that doesn't happen?
Absolutely, that's already underway. Working with ICE right now. In order to go out, they have to have some type of criminal element to work with ICE. This weekend was a perfect example of that policy being followed despite it being new.
Joe, can I answer that too?
Yeah, sure.
Can I answer your question also? I want you to understand something. We're saying criminal illegal aliens, right? We're not saying families. So there's no difference in me arresting somebody for domestic violence inside of a house. I'm going to take him away from his family or her, right? They're going to be separated because they're criminals. So it doesn't separate families. Now, if ICE holds that person because they're a criminal illegal alien and say it's a domestic violence or it's something interfamilial or it's a sexual assault inside of a family, do we want to just allow that person to walk back into those families? You know, what would you want to do? So that's the question, right? So it's not about breaking up families, because we do break up families when we arrest people, right? Every day we arrest somebody inside of a home for something, we do arrest people for that. That doesn't mean they're not going to go back to their families. That's not our decision. But they made a decision that has created the instance where they were no longer going to be inside their families.
Des?
Yeah, I got one for Roybal. It's pretty easy. Can you talk about how this whole program is going to help keep the community safe?
Absolutely. I'll go back to the example I gave. While keeping those criminals inside the jail, it reduces that risk because they're no longer on the street with propensity to reoffend and generating more victims. One of my promises to the community as I was running for this office is to reduce victims. That's exactly what this does. If we have a threat of a citizen, I can go to the judge and ask, hey judge, here's a threat to the community, please increase bond. Why shouldn't I do that just because they're not citizens of the United States? That makes no sense. So keeping those people in custody so they don't have the opportunity to reoffend will reduce victims and keep the community safer.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to clarify, because I believe it's the belief or policy of the current presidential administration that being undocumented is a crime in and of itself, and is that kind of what you guys are looking at? Because you had mentioned you're not looking to get just families separate, that sort of thing. Will you be considering being undocumented as a crime and where you have detainment and deportation?
Yeah, so I can answer that very simply, right? In Colorado, we look for probable cause for an arrest. So we use state statutes to make those arrests. That doesn't change. So we're still using our probable cause in the state of Colorado to make the arrest. And undocumented is actually an illegal alien that is entered in the United States, right? Under federal law and under federal jurisdiction, that is a crime. But we don't enforce that crime. So we will not be. But when it comes to someone that has committed a crime in Colorado, under our probable cause for an arrest, then we will arrest. Yes.
Next question. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Sheriff Roybal. I'm still a little confused about the recent change in policy. I was wondering if you could please clarify what, if anything, under state law previously had stopped you from telling ICE who you had in your jails?
Under state law, telling ICE did not change. Holding them did. Like I started answering that question previously, we had a lawsuit under the last administration. And so that changed our approach during the last administration. I have worked with my attorneys because I don't want us to be sued again. If we are sued, who pays for it? The citizens of El Paso County. I want to reduce that liability and keep the community safe. So when we were sued, the 287G program was no longer in existence. The last administration got rid of it. We no longer held for ICE, and we cut off communication. Working with my attorneys to ensure that we are not sued again, working with ICE within those boundaries of current Colorado law, you're right, hasn't changed. I am comfortable we can once again work with ICE following the current law. The big difference is I cannot house anybody once they bond or they're finished with their sentence. I must let them go. It's those pretrial detainee criminals who I think pose a risk to the community that I will seek to house inside the El Paso County Jail. Does that help?
Thank you. And also, I was wondering whether your office has been detecting any presence of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua here in your county.
We have seen some presence, active investigations. I will not go into the details of that.
Yes,
Just
sir.
to clarify, nothing in current law prevents you from holding someone for ICE if they have an arrest warrant signed by a judge, correct?
That is correct.
It's only the civil holds that state law does not allow you to enforce.
That is correct. Once they post bond or they are done with their sentence, I must release them.
Yes, ma'am.
When we talk about ICE detainers, is that up to 48 hours you hold them for?
No, an ICE detainer, if I was able to hold someone on an ICE detainer, that can be indefinite because I'm holding them for my federal partner, and they determine through their judicial process what that time will be, not here locally.
Yes, ma'am.
Sheriff Mikesell, you talked about crime going up in the state of Colorado and more this year. Do you have any data or statistics that you could share with us to, identify that those crimes are actually being committed specifically by undocumented immigrants versus U.S. citizens?
Well, here's what's happened in the state of Colorado. Right now, your Colorado State Patrol, your Department of Corrections, your parole departments, your probation departments, your all your different enforcement mechanisms cannot, by this law, actually speak with ICE at all, right? So anytime anyone is held, the state can't talk to them to identify those issues. But I can tell you this, we've arrested multiple parties who have had multiple contacts in the state of Colorado and been convicted in Colorado, released onto parole, and then they come to my county and they commit a burglary after having been committed to a sentence in Colorado multiple times. Parole then releases them back to parole. They don't identify to ICE, and each time that happens, they commit more crimes. My 287G, which I still have, right, and it has been a huge impact for us to deal with, that person is then brought to ICE's attention, and then ICE puts a detainer on them, and they're held for those things. And I do want to go back to one thing you said about the civil detainers, and I want to make a clarification on that. So in the United States, when somebody's arrested or they come across the border undocumented or illegally into the United States, they are documented then. They then issue a detainer request, which has actually been upheld by Congress. So that civil detainer, which Colorado is one of the only states that does not allow the civil detainers to be held on, that civil detainer is based on a criminal charge that has been conducted on the border, right? But since there's so few federal judges, they use it because they're out of country. They're not from this country. They have to do it as a civil detention. So even though it starts as a criminal, that detainer that's released to us to say, please hold this person for 48 hours, is actually a civil detainer, but it's a federal crime that started it, and it's actually a federal process for removal in the United States. So it's not just like you would think as a civil case that's done down here at a local courthouse, and it's been upheld by Congress multiple times that it is a valid detainer for law enforcement to hold on. So I wanted to
The law does not recognize it as
absolutely.
the power of an arrest warrant approved and signed by a judge.
Well, and the problem is there wouldn't be one signed approved by a judge. You can't. There's too many. That's why the United States Congress said that you didn't have to. So you're right. In the state of Colorado, that's one of the things that's a problem, is that we can't hold on the 48-hour detainer hold, because if I have somebody that's a sexual assault person and I have victims, but our bonding, because we have very weak bonding in the state of Colorado, releases that person, I can only hold them for 6 hours. If ICE can't get an agent there within 6 hours, even though that person is undocumented, criminal, illegal alien in the state of Colorado, would walk free. And then we have to chase him with ICE to try to find him again. And that's if he doesn't go get a firearm. That's if he doesn't reoffend. That's if those things don't happen again. So there is a difference when we talk about the civil immigration detainers as to what they really are and what really has been spun up as to what their need for holding is. Thank you.
Okay, 2 more questions. Slide.
It sounds like the crux of this problem is how easy it is for some criminals to get out on bond, which seems like a problem for both people here, undocumented and citizens. Why focus on the undocumented people? Why not use all this effort to push for a bill that would make it harder for all criminals to get out on bond?
You're absolutely correct. The bonding schedule has been lowered over recent years, so it's easier to get out of jail. In fact, there has been talks of proposed legislation to eliminate bonds altogether. Bonds exist to ensure there is some collateral so people who are charged with the crime are motivated to go to court and see the process through. My goal for undocumented and being able to house them and making it tougher is, we'll call it a flight risk. I'm not sure if you all agree. What's motivating them to stay here in our local jurisdiction when they have a family in another country? It's easier for them to leave, where citizens of the United States may not be so easy for them to flee. Because where are they going to go? More likely another state, and that does happen every day. We have one of the largest extradition programs in the state of Colorado, where my deputies or a contractor goes and picks up people in various states throughout the United States and bring them back to El Paso County so we can hold justice. If they're from another country, it makes it harder. I can't go into another country and apprehend somebody and bring them back to El Paso County. That's what this law would help us with.
Last question. Anyone? Yes, ma'am.
I know Sheriff Roybal, you answered this question, but Sheriff Mikesell, what makes you believe that this time is going to be different and that this legislation won't die?
Well, I think the narrative is changing, right? I hear a lot of people talk about, well, there's no crimes being committed. There's the illegal alien issue is not an issue with crimes. That people talk a lot about that. But I think your general person that's voting sees it differently. They see it differently because in Denver last year, how many millions and millions of dollars were then taken from local projects that could have helped people with mental health issues, people helping with food issues, or food banks, all of those different pieces, and that money's been diverted to help with undocumented illegal aliens within the city of Denver or other locations. It's been in the news, we've all seen it. I think Colorado taxpayers are going, why are we footing the bill for everything that's happening? Why are we dealing with the housing demands of people that can't afford those housing pieces? Why are we as a state only helping these people? Because it's political. It's become this huge political battle that a lot of victims and a lot of Colorado citizens are being trampled under. And that's really the crux of it. In all honesty, should the criminal illegal aliens even be an issue in this state? Or should we really be looking inward and looking at our Colorado budget's out of control? The cost of living in Colorado is crazy. The issue with our mental health population, our homeless populations, shouldn't that be money being diverted to those groups? We're seeing it all across the state. And my hope is that through We Colorado, that we're building some logic into things. It's easy as a young politician to look at things and go, you know what, we're doing this because it's a cause. We're going to help this because it's political. Outside of the presidential elections or outside of Congress and outside the Senate, there's people being hurt. They're not getting the resources they need in Colorado to help normal Colorado citizens. We have bigger issues. We have fires during the summers. We have water issues that are coming up. All of those issues have an impact on Colorado citizens that aren't being looked at. We need to be looking at that or we're losing Colorado as a whole. Thank you.
Can I add one thing to that? If I could add one thing about what's changed. In 2023, Governor Polis tweeted out that he was thankful to the Biden administration for giving temporary status to Venezuelans so that they could stay here in Colorado. In 2024, just last year, the city of Denver put out a manual on how to be a sanctuary city. It's online. You can find it. I'll be happy to provide it to you if you can't find it. But in 2025, we've got a governor now who just a few weeks ago was saying that Colorado isn't a sanctuary state. Well, somebody read some polling data, I would suspect, and someone saw the results of elections. The American people want this problem solved. They want politicians of both sides of the aisle to work together to solve it. This is a 70%, I've seen polling that shows it's a 70% issue. A very high number of Democrats want this issue solved. And it's not about going and rounding people up. It's about the rule of law, protecting the rule of law, getting criminal elements when they exist, whether they are here illegally or whether they're citizens of the United States, working cooperatively and together to solve the problem for the citizens of the United States. And so what's changed? I think there's a lot that's changed, and I hope the citizens of Colorado will show up when it comes time to testify on these bills, put grassroots pressure on our legislature and our governor to sign it, and I hope that he does. I said the other day, if he signs a bill that reverses all of these, I will show up and stand behind him in solidarity.
Thank you all for being here. If anyone wants to do interviews with anyone that stays afterwards, they're welcome to, but we're going to go ahead and exit. Have a great day.